It's been a long week. Right, the Daily Express, what a story. Labour hands over cash to foreign farmers. 536 million pounds in foreign aid to foreign farmers, Suzanne.
So that's almost exactly the same amount as they're trying to take from farmers from inheritance tax in this country, which will fund the NHS for just 1 day.
Yes.
It's an absolute disgrace.
It's an absolute kick in the teeth. If you're a farmer and you've read that, that'll be a kick in the teeth. Somebody made a point to me, though, this affects constituencies that Labour probably didn't win. But let's see if it has an electoral effect on them, because this is the kind of thing that people will not forget.
And just politically, Matthew Laza, you could argue that the inheritance tax rate on farmers wasn't a good look anyway for the risk reward. As Suzanne said, it's £500 million,
it's nothing.
1 day of the NHS, and at the same time, this is even worse. No, £500 million to foreign farmers.
If you're a farmer and you're angry, then this is going to make you even more angry. When you actually dig down into it, you find that what this isn't new money. This is existing money from within the aid budget, and it's going to help farmers in some of the poorest countries in the world grow food so we don't have starvation across the world.
Oh, Matthew,
so it's helping people grow their own food.
You're such an optimist, aren't you? That money,
I'd like to think so.
That money is going to farmers overseas. We're telling them what to grow. So they'll say, right, you grow bananas, you grow coconuts. So they all grow bananas and coconuts. We get cheap bananas and coconut. It forces the prices down there. This is an absolute scam. This is not proper farming. It's not the best use of foreign aid. And frankly, it would have been far better if they'd taken that 500 million from those farmers, given it to British farmers to help keep food prices down here, because people are so struggling.
Well, I agree we need to support our farmers here, which is why there's the biggest ever package of support for farmers in the budget. We can go back into the argument about the tax.
The government have given one hand and taken away the other. Listen, I agree.
From the biggest farmers.
I agree with helping only the very poorest people around the world. Well, but I would say this, though. We can't feed them before we feed us.
Yeah, quite right. And there's a paragraph here, Matthew, so I'd like you to respond to this directly. There's a low-carbon project in Brazil, which is the world's 11th richest nation. So why should we be supporting?
Well, it's got the world's 11th largest economy. I mean, per capita, it isn't. Per head, it isn't the 11th richest. It's the 11th. It's a very big country, and there's a lot of real poverty in Brazil. But we need to make sure it's targeted. And I'm in favour of absolutely, which is why the government's trying to act on it.
This is the issue. We give money to people who have money. Now, imagine that was, somewhere really poor, had famine, fine, but Brazil is a functioning first world economy who should be taking care of their own issues.
Sean, what's the point of the foreign aid budget?
I'm not entirely sure. We have this notion...
I mean, who are we trying to please? What is it for, really?
We have this notion, right, of two things, soft power and our international reputation. I am sick to death of people in the political world imagining that anybody else in the world cares what we think. They absolutely don't. So if we're spending money on that, we shouldn't. The soft power thing is a little bit more nuanced. There is times where a relationship we have with a country built around a particular thing, we're helping them feed themselves, helping them start something, does have a benefit to us. But unless that benefit is quite direct, I don't think we should.
I don't think it should be done for our international reputation. International aid's a moral obligation to the poorest people in the world, which is why it must be targeted and why we should not be paying for the Indian space programme and some of the other horror stories we've had. Therefore, I think scrutiny is a good thing to ensure that the things we shouldn't be paying for are ironed out.
What's the current budget? Is it something like 11, 12 billion for foreign aid?
Yeah, that sounds about right. It's 1.5% of GNI.
Even halving that.
Well, the Tories did cut it slightly.
When people talk about the Tories and what we did in the last Parliament, some of it is indefensible, but the cut in foreign aid was not. That was the thing that...
Well, it was opposed by Theresa May and David Cameron.
Well, good for them, but it was something that we needed to do because we have real problems here. And it's that basic thing. If we suffer, eventually that budget will disappear altogether.
Yeah.
But if you want things like to keep migration down, you need to ensure that people have more reason to stay in their countries.
It's working.
Well, it could be a worse situation, Suzanne. It could be an even worse situation.
We are funding migration separately. Yeah. Separately. We have a whole other thing.
No, I mean, if you improve conditions in country, then people have less incentive to leave. Also, the Tories have taken the cost of the hotels. Some of it has come out of the international aid budget.
That was brilliant. That was right to do because we're still helping foreign nationals with that money.
The foreign aid budget is such a disgrace that they are paying civil servants bonuses to spend it on time every year.
And you know what?
It's far too big. That wouldn't be happening.
Well, I still go into the Oxfam shop. I still put my few quid in the Christian Aid envelope.
I want to go back to that moral responsibility responsibility. We are propping up governments around the world who are not doing the right thing by their people, and we're paying for it. We shouldn't be doing that.
And so much of it's going in corruption.
I listened to this on another radio station today. I listened to a really heartbreaking call from a pensioner. She called in, and the presenter eventually established that this lady, she was a pensioner, fairly old. She was calling from Leicester, where the producer looked up at the time of the call. It was 1 degree in Leicester. It was freezing cold. She admitted that she didn't want to put her heating on. She was sat freezing cold in her flat. She began to break down in tears. She was crying. She was saying how she couldn't understand why, in a country where she's grafted for 40 years, she slaved away, blood, sweat and tears in Britain, that she now couldn't afford and was too scared and frightened to put her heating on because she just simply couldn't afford it. And it really broke my heart. And when I hear stories like this, where we're throwing tens, hundreds of millions of pounds to countries who don't need the money, the winter fuel allowance is, what are they recouping from that?
Well, nothing, because, of course, they've encouraged everybody who wasn't on pension credit to take up pension credit. So now it's actually going to cancel. It's the most ridiculous policy imaginable. They didn't stress test it. They didn't think about it. It was something that a civil servant had been pushing for years, and they said, oh, that's a good idea, let's do it.
Do you know it really shows you two things it shows that are important. The Labour Party did not have a plan how to run this country.
No.
That's why
we found that you guys had left the country in a terrible state, Sean.
That's why they're making these huge mistakes. The other thing as well is ideological. These are choices that they've made. They could have done for it. This isn't about money. And here's the real thing. They said they wouldn't raise income tax, they wouldn't raise corporation tax, and the other one I can't remember, but that's 70% of the government's tax intake. If you don't raise them, you then expose yourself to have to raise all the other taxes, which have devastating, irreplaceable consequences, i.e., what we're doing to pensions.
But they also promised.
I hope that the lady in question it was helped to get pension credit. It sounds like she would be entitled to it. I hope that increases her income and she can turn the heating on. But I don't think we should be sending the winter fuel allowance to millionaires or even people on large salaries. I would have done it in a slightly more graduated way than the government's done it. But there is a very strong case for taking the winter fuel allowance away from the richest pensioners, because the country we've got to pay for that black hole and the Tories' unfunded promises.
Why don't they identify the rich?
I mean, it's not. I mean, I would take away from people on, over 30, 40, 35 grand a year, basically above average income.
Fictitious. The problem for the Labour Party, you saw what they've done to the farmers. In their minds, there's this mystery group of rich people who have all of our tax money. It just doesn't.
It's the 500 richest farmers.
It doesn't work like that. It just doesn't work like that.
Matthew, Labour are the new nasty party, aren't they?
We've had to take some really tough decisions, but hopefully they're going to pay off in terms of the economy growing. Because the Tories left unfunded policy after unfunded policy.
You've said that twice now, that the Tories... I'm no massive Tory fan, let me tell you that, but you've said that twice, that the Tories left such a mess. They left inflation at target, or at least below target.
For 1 month.
They left record GDP figures for the first 6 months of this year, the best in the G7, the best in decades. They left lower, the Bank of England interest rates falling, mortgage rates falling, cost of living falling, energy bills falling. So you keep saying that they picked up this horrible mess. Looks like to me they picked up a pretty decent.
Well, they did. I mean, the energy bills. Look, on those economic metrics, they had a few good months, which is why they chanced their arm on the election. But the record across the 14 years is of failure and underinvestment, and that takes time to sort out. Of course, the government's unpopular, having to do really. And you're going to say this is difficult things, but there were whole policies like there was a $1.5 billion hole in paying for the immigration. How do you do it? You want to cut the health service, Suzanne?
No.
Okay.
No,
so that's fine. So at the moment, the Tories are coming.
I tell you what I wouldn't do if I was Chancellor and I found a so-called 22 billion black hole. I wouldn't give Ed Miliband another 22 billion.
Okay, so you'd have those green jobs go to other countries.
Untried carbon.
You'd have green jobs. You would push us back.
Hold on. Let me just intervene.
You're against British success.
No, let me just say what Matthew's doing is what people on the left, the Labour Party, always do. They throw all of these nice-sounding sound bites at you. But let's be clear: the money that's been given to Ed Miliband is for a technology that hasn't worked anywhere else in the world.
And do you know what, Matthew? even eco-zealots think that carbon capture is a load of BS.
Well, actually, that's probably the reason why some people should be in favour of it, because it's a sensible solution, and it's going to be happening in Humberside, and it's going to be happening in Humberside. It's ultimately how we will lower energy bills. We can't pretend that the world isn't changing. We can't pretend the world isn't changing. And let's just remind ourselves, Sean, your party at the moment has two policies, which is the two policies going into is to cut taxes for the most rich farmers and cut taxes on private school fees. Those are the two policies that Kerry Badenoch's announced, and you wonder why she's doing so badly.
You have a tax on education, and you have a tax that's going to destroy the farming industry.
It's ridiculous.
A tax on the minority, a lot of whom are not even British, in posh schools.
I think the Tories are onto something here. They're two taxes they should change.
Yeah, Matthew, you remind me of Comical Ali during the invasion.
Oh, that's harsh.